Hey guys, it's Ben here with the Half Court Heave podcast. Sorry, I slipped up there a little bit, but we're here with Isaac and Arjun. This is Isaac's first time on here talking about football. But before we get into the action, I just want to be straight up and say you should go get your merchandise. We all have it on. I did have it on last episode, but it's cheap, it's comfortable. The winter's coming up, and it's already kind of here. But
There's
generally,
nothing more comfortable than seeing a half-court youth hoodie on a nice, cozy campfire.
yeah. And I mean, Isaac, you got that.
Literally, I've literally worn my hoodie for like a couple weeks straight since I got it. Like it's incredible.
Yeah, like Isaac might be a little musty right now, but it proves how comfortable it is. But anyways,
Really good.
but anyway, before we get into the action, just go ahead and like and subscribe because I have to listen to these two bozos talk about sports for an hour. So hit that like button, subscribe, and we will be posting more content constantly. But anyways, let's just talk about our first thing we want to talk about today. Let's talk about the perfect offseason for the Knicks. This might be our last perfect offseason before the offseason starts. But Arjun, what about you start us off?
All right, Knicks, we got it. This is probably the most interesting case because this is the definition of expectation versus reality. Now, for the Knicks, I actually don't have any trades for them because I think the main thing is just developing their players, but there are also some free agency signings I'm going to get into. Now, there are some guys that I want to release. I want to release Wayne Ellington because, in my opinion, an empty roster spot is more valuable than Wayne Ellington being on the floor. Jared Harper, cap hold. Damian Dotson, cap hold. Now, the first pick, we got the pick 8. Pick 8 is going to be Tyrese Halliburton because that's the one area where the Knicks don't have a good point guard on their team. They have Alfred Payton, but he's a more of a bench point guard. Now, let's get into the 27th pick. Josh Green, an athletic wing. He can shoot that ball. He'll be perfect for that team. Number 38, Killian Tilly. Now, this guy is one of those 4-year college players. He's like he's a 7-footer European. He's gonna be good for that team. No matter he's got size and hopefully we can develop him. He's got a good jump shot. Now free agent signings. Sign Jay Crowder to a 2-year, $7 million deal. You know, he adds some muscle to your bench. He's not that much of a high scorer, but he can be valuable to your team. Now the big one is Danilo Gallinari to a 3-year, $16 million deal. This guy can shoot. He's the Italian stallion. And I think that fills that small forward spot. Now my final roster has Halliburton, Barrett, Gallinari, Randall, and then Mitchell Robinson.
All right. So I think you kind of contradicted everything that the Knicks fans joke about and what the NBA community jokes about as you sign 2 power forwards to big contracts. I mean, I know it's not huge contracts, but signing power forwards to this power forward heavy roster is just dumb. And I mean, just loading the roster full of forwards when you have young forwards. But what I think you should do is I think even if LaMelo Ball is available at 8, talking about the 8th pick, I don't think you should trade anything with the 8th pick because I know that you'll fuck up the trades if you're New York. I think that you need to draft Killian Hayes even if LaMelo Ball is available. I feel like he is better than LaMelo Ball, and he has not a higher ceiling but a way higher floor, and New York needs that high floor after so many low ceilings, low floors that they've drafted their team that have completely flopped. But other than that, pick 27, I say you got to pick maybe Cassius Stanley. I feel like he would be the good draft pick there. He's very explosive. You need excitement. You don't have any, Madison Square Garden lacks ticket sales. That's how boring it is to watch a Knicks game. He brings in excitement, and he also brings in potential to your roster. But going into free agency, let's see, there's probably about, 8 free agents on this team. You let Bobby Portis walk on his coach's option, and I really don't have anything in specific to sign. I just want this team to focus on not winning, but developing players, not trying to go halfway win now and halfway develop young stars. Just try to develop the young players, aka tank, and then next season, when it's one of the most loaded drafts that I've ever seen, you got Cade Cunningham, you got Jalen Green, you got Evan Mobley, you got some great players in the next draft. Pick up one of those young stars and run with it. But other than that, that's really all I have to say for the Knicks. Just don't fuck it up and don't sign players like Danilo Gallinari to big contracts. Isaac, what do you have to say?
Yeah, please, for the Knicks, please don't sign any more veterans. It's not going to be – I think Ben touched on a really important thing is, like, they go, like, half in. like they try to develop Mitchell Robinson, but they're playing him like 25 minutes, like around like that last year. They need to develop their young guys. That needs to be their main focus. But like, stop signing these old guys. It's just not helping you. Like, if you could get rid of Julius Randle, that would be really helpful. I'm totally with Ben in terms of the draft. I think Cassius Stanley at 27th. I don't know if he's going to fall that far. I think he might. But that's going to be really good. He can definitely thrive. You know, he's been in the spotlight for a lot of his career, even in high school. I think he can definitely thrive in Madison Square Garden, sell tickets, and play very well in that environment. And Killian Hayes also at the 8th pick is going to be a good guard. You want to have their young base going into a year where we're talking about like tanking. Have your young base develop so that if you have a good team, doesn't matter what your record is, you probably want a bad record so you can have a higher draft.
Can I ask a quick question?
But like really quick, you just have to get these young guys minutes. Give them minutes. Like, don't go half in on the winning now. Give RJ Barrett and Mitchell Robinson minutes, and then if you draft Killian Hayes, give him minutes.
Yes.
You know.
What do you want to say?
Who would I want to Ben? Just tell me. Don't go into detail, but both of you tell me who your starting point guard is going to be.
For the Knicks, I would say Killian Hayes, obviously, because that's who I feel like he has one of the highest ceilings in this draft, and nobody really talks about it. I know I've slandered him in the past, but I really wasn't educated on his basketball skill. I mean, he's probably one of the highest floors and highest ceilings in this draft. Isaac, who is your starting point guard? Killian Hayes as well?
Killian Hayes,
So,
exactly.
I think that'll be it for this topic. Next thing I want to talk about is, should the Suns look to trade or build around Devin Booker? Isaac, you want to start us off?
Sure. I think you can go either way with this. I'm not going to give you a definitive answer, but I'm just going to give you the pros and cons really quickly of each thing. I think his trade stock is super high right now. You looked at the run. That he had in the bubble. I think that's really significant, but it's going to depend on who you're sending with him, you know? I actually will say that building around Devin Booker is a better idea. I don't know how much he likes being in Phoenix. He hasn't won very well, but they do have young pieces. Keep in mind, DeAndre Ayton was injured, I'm pretty sure, for all 8 of the games that they won in the bubble. And that's going to be a good player that fits in with some of the guys on that team.
Yeah.
I would go with building around him, but if you're going to trade him, you have to max out his trade opportunity because it's not getting any higher than it is right now.
All right, yeah. You made a really good point there talking about the trade and capability and how much value he has. I think that you do need to trade Devin Booker, and you need to do it soon. I mean, you could maybe play out this season, and I think you should play out this season and trade him next season for a draft capital, especially a pick in next draft. But I think that Devin Booker is capitalizing and maximizing his value is not waiting until he requests a trade. There's already been like the minimum rumors where it's like one guy in the media says, "Oh, Devin Booker, it's the biggest secret in the NBA." And the worst kept secret that Devin Booker wants out of Phoenix. I think before those big rumors get out and before next season they don't win anything, then you need to get rid of Devin Booker. Because, I mean, right now, if you wanted to trade him this offseason, which I heavily doubt they will, his value's at the highest it's been in his career. He just went 8-0 in the bubble, and he was looking like the best team in the bubble as the best player when he was playing. Of course, he's not better than LeBron James, but you get my point. I think that you do need to capitalize off of his current value or his value after the season. Make sure that you trade him before his value drops to an all-time low because he wants out. Arshun, what do you have to say?
Okay. I'm fixed on you keeping Devin Booker because if you're the Suns, this guy is one of the best young scorers that you have in today's NBA. He's along with Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum. Now, Booker averaged 31, 5, and 6 throughout the bubble. He led his team 8-0. I don't care if he didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, they didn't amount to anything.
He had an amazing run. Now, let's flash back to last season. They started out actually pretty well. I don't remember what the record was, but they started out very well. But DeAndre Ayton got suspended from some drug thing. They got back. They were never really the same. Their record dropped. Now, this team, DeAndre Ayton, who is one of the best young centers in the league, this team is a potential playoff team. And I'm not talking about like 8th or 7th seed. I'm talking about like 6th or 5th seed. I'm talking about a team that
that's the thing. Is like my philosophy for the NBA as a general manager is it's completely different than the NFL. But like if it's not working, you need to trade that primary talent. It's the same thing we saw in Charlotte with Kemba
It is
Walker.
working though. It is.
No,
it
it's not.
work.
It's
You can't
not. It's not.
immediately trade him.
He has not made the playoffs in his career. And also, I don't care if he went 8-0 in the bubble. You can't count anything on the bubble to be certain for the rest of their career. But when it comes to Devin Booker, he's not succeeding. He is not succeeding. The team is not succeeding, and they are failing to build a team around him. The best they've done is Kelly Oubre and Ricky Rubio. I think that you need to trade him because you need to get the most value you can for him before he requests a trade and his value drops. I mean, right, Arjun, what do you want to say?
I mean, how can you say that he's not succeeding? I mean, he's showing signs of the Suns are obviously showing signs of a winning.
But also, you said 5 or 6 seed. If that's your cap out, if that's your expectations,
it's the West.
trade your
West.
damn star.
What do you
If your expectations for your main goal are 5 or 6 seed,
no, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant.
5 or
Ben,
6 seed does not mean the championship.
That's not what I meant. I meant that. Wait, Isaac, can I just get this through?
Yeah,
Because I really want to say this. That I meant that maybe this year it could be a 5 or 6 team. This team with maybe 3 or 4 years, maybe when Devin Booker is an absolute superstar, this team could be a 1 or 2 seed. I mean, that's when the West starts to change, the Warriors get really old. I mean, this is a team that I think can go with a 1 or 2 seed. I mean, they've got terrific passer than Ricky Rubio. Isaac, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I just think the bottom line is you have to go all in now. Don't wait a second and don't wait another year to see if it works out. You have to go all in. Like you can't wait another year. His trade stock is not going any higher than it is right now. So you either have to put pieces around him that are going to make sure that he's winning right now, or trade him. You can't afford another year of failing Phoenix.
Going back to my original point, I do think that they need to trade him next season. I think this season is a big season for him to prove that he's not just a star, but he's a superstar. If he can maybe sneak to like the 9th or 8th spot, then his value will go to a new high because, I mean, coming into the bubble, they were like, the 11th spot or I think the last spot of the teams in the bubble, which is not a successful team, but they edged up that way. And now he has the chance to prove his actual worth, which I feel like is higher than just the 8-0 Suns because he is one of the best, if not like top 3 shooting guards in the league right now. I'm
going to give my conclusion statement real quick, and then I'm going to end it there. But look, this team, I don't think this is the all-in case. I think this is a case where you see what they do. Maybe, you know what, maybe you trade him next year. I just don't think you should, but maybe if they want to, go ahead, get some good stuff in there. But I think they should just keep them. I mean, this is an important year for the Suns.
For this year, you should definitely keep them. But if you want to win and your star isn't winning, you get rid of them. That's what the Hornets did, and they're on a good trajectory. Not saying they're anywhere near winning, but getting rid of Kemba Walker was one of the best things they've done, and I've said this multiple times. But I do want to move on and talk about, do you think that Curry and Klay stand a chance, any chance, against AD and LeBron next season? Actually, I do want to talk about this before you guys get into it. I think that they do, and not only do they stand a chance, the question is, do you think AD and LeBron stand a chance against Steph Curry and Klay Thompson? I think everybody forgot how good Steph Curry and especially Klay Thompson are because people are projecting Steph to be an MVP candidate next year. This is probably the best, and actually undisputed, the best backcourt in NBA basketball's history, and especially the best shooting backcourt. I can't hear any debating for that. And this team is coming in, and I know they have a bad bench. I've talked about this in the past, but that's the same with the Lakers. You can't say that's not the same about the Lakers. You got to look at both sides, where these are 2 teams with 2 stars, except for the Lakers have more depth in their starting lineup when it comes to scoring and defending. When the Lakers have Avery Bradley in their starting lineup, players like JaVale McGee compared to the Andrew Wiggins, Marquise Chris, and Draymond Green as their other players in their starting lineup. But generally, the real question to me is if AD and LeBron stand a chance, because this shooting backcourt is probably the most underrated team in the NBA.
Yeah, totally. I think in terms of offense, they're definitely the Achilles heel. As the Lakers are not a great shooting team, the Warriors are an incredible shooting team. They can space the floor against them, make the Lakers defense look pretty bad, definitely with their shooting. I don't have any doubt that they're going to be back like they were before they were injured, even if they have, it takes them a couple games to get into it or something like that, or they're not 100%. I have a lot of faith in those guys. I think it's going to come down to defense. Can their defense stand up to AD and LeBron specifically?
Oh, actually, Isaac, The real question to me, it's not if AD and LeBron can be like if Steph and Klay are like if that team can guard AD and LeBron, because like Draymond, he's not going to shut down AD. You can't shut down Anthony Davis even if you wanted to, but they can like that's not a real issue. He's going to get his buckets. LeBron's going to get his buckets. That's no question. But when you look at the Lakers, who's going to guard Steph? Who's going to guard Klay? Nobody on that roster is going to guard Steph or Klay. They don't stand a breathing chance. Avery Bradley, he's one hell of a defender. Rajon Rondo, assuming they keep him, he's one hell of a defender. But they do not stand one living chance. They will barely be able to breathe against Klay Thompson. Again, I've said people have forgotten about this man. The man who scored 37 in one quarter, 60 in 3 quarters, and they benched him just so he wouldn't go too far. They wanted to rest him. This team is going to be dirty, and it's extremely underrated for the next season. Arjun, what do you think?
All right. I think that I want to credit both sides because both hurts you in different ways. Now, the Warriors hurt you in their perimeter game, and the perimeter game is one hell of a perimeter game. That's the only way they can hurt you. Now, I'm not saying that it's hard to guard them, and you're giving the Lakers less credit than they deserve. They're not like a Clippers level perimeter defense team, but they've got Danny Green who can block shots out there. I'm not saying that they're going to clamp up Steph and Klay because that's not going to happen. But I just think AD and LeBron, there are just too many ways. They have so many weapons in their arsenal that can beat you in the pick and roll. They can beat you in a 3-point shot. Anthony Davis does have, and LeBron, they have that 3-point.
No, but
not compared to Steph and Curry.
You saw their weaknesses.
They have more weapons.
You saw their weaknesses flare when you saw the Rockets when they played a good game. When they played their one good game of that series, it was when Russell Westbrook and James Harden had terrific games, and it was in Game 1. They had terrific games. They don't have an answer for elite guard play, and that's what the Warriors are. Don't get me started.
You can't say that it's because they didn't have a good game. The Lakers' defense was a result as to why they beat them 4-1. They beat them in 5 games.
Was it the Lakers' defense, or was it Russell Westbrook being the notorious playoff flop that he always is?
No, you can't use that one game as against the Lakers. You can't use that one game. They did do a good job of defending him. I get Russ.
The way that the Rockets are trying to set up their team with small ball with great shooting, that's something that they'll never get to, and that's something that the Warriors have perfected in the past, and that's going to be the weakness of the Los Angeles Lakers, spreading the floor and shooting their minds out. Are you kidding? And both of those guys can also get to the basket too. So that's going to be a nightmare matchup for AD and LeBron.
Yeah, and I hate to say it since I don't like the guy's game at all, but say Steph and Klay, they're going to get their 30. Against the Lakers, they're going to get their 30. Klay might be an 18-point per game scorer, but in the real games that matter, he's going to get 30 if he wants to because it's Klay Thompson. But even when they get 30, how are you going to guard Andrew Wiggins too? I know he's a bad defender, but if he's still on that roster, you're not going to be able to guard Andrew Wiggins. He is notoriously hated for being that sloppy, he kind of doesn't work on his game that much, but he's a 20-point per game scorer as well. You have that second pick, you could spend that on Denny. I'm not going to even try to pronounce his last name, who is also an amazing scorer and also a great defender and also a great playmaker. This team is the complete villain to this Lakers team. They are the team that can take this Lakers team down, and I don't think that the Lakers can take this team down, Arjun.
I think they can take this team down. I think it is going to be a close matchup, but the Lakers just have the size. They have the overall size to beat them. We've seen it with the Trailblazers. Nurkic isn't a great post defender. Whiteside's lazy. They completely just destroyed them when Lillard wasn't putting up 40 or 50
but they're going to need better perimeter defense.
James
White. I don't care if Steph puts up 30, Klay puts up his 30. I know that it's going to come down to a Game 7 series. I get that that's the Lakers' weakness, but it's also the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm not a biased Lakers fan or anything because I'm not a Lakers fan. I hate the Lakers, but this is a team that has such a great interior force, and I just don't. I know LeBron is going to drop his 50.
This league is completely revolved around perimeter.
That's how it's going to go.
They can get their buckets in the paint. But when Steph Curry does what Steph Curry does, and when Klay Thompson does what Klay Thompson does, they are unbeatable practically.
No, they're not. They're not unbeatable. They're beatable. It's damn hard to beat them. But when the Lakers are unbeatable, when the Warriors have no interior defense besides a washed-up Draymond Green who had the statistically worst season of his career, then you can't beat the Lakers on the defensive end. They're gonna feast.
Okay, but their perimeter defense right now, which is mostly Rajon Rondo, he's probably gonna leave their team. They're not gonna have great perimeter defense.
I mean,
they're
they have
going to
Danny
eat
Green
up
and
the
Avery Bradley,
floor with them.
but-
They're going to space them out and eat them up on the offensive end. They're
Yeah,
not.
I mean,
They're
yeah.
probably going to lose Rondo. They're not going to have good enough perimeter defense.
And then odds are they're going to trade
mean,
for a third
that's
star because LeBron James is, I think, the vice president of the NBA Players Organization. He's going to get a third star if he wants a third star, and he's probably going to be giving up those types of players to those types of teams like Danny Green, like a Rajon Rondo if they sign him back for a sign and trade. And they're going to be giving out Kyle Kuzma, who, I mean, we love to joke about him, but he put up 11 a game on good shooting, and he's a good player for a championship team. I think that this team, I think the Warriors are just the perfect build to take down these Lakers because, I mean, LeBron and AD, they're going to get 30. They're going to get whatever they want on any night. You're not going to stop them unless they have a bad night, which is very rare. But, I mean, you can just let them get their buckets. Other than that, nobody can score. If you focus everything on Steph and Klay or you let them get their buckets, guess who else is going to get their buckets as well? Andrew Wiggins. You look at whoever they're going to draft at 2. I trust Bob Myers with everything. That man has built he's built a great team. And then whoever he drafts at 2 is probably going to be phenomenal as well. I fully trust this Warriors team to take down these Lakers. And man, that Warriors team is going to be good next season. But without further ado, let's get into football. Let's talk about these Miami Dolphins. And we've actually wanted to talk about this for a couple of weeks. We've been debating this off camera. But do you guys think that the Dolphins should have kept Ryan Fitzpatrick starting instead of Tua Tagovailoa? Arjun, you start this one off.
I actually made these notes before Tua had this. He had a great game, 250 yards. But I'm still going to stick with my point, and I think they shouldn't have started Tua. I think they should have kept Fitzpatrick at that starting spot. Because keep in mind, the Dolphins were still a winning team. They were still a solid team. I know Tua had a great performance, but it's not guaranteed it's going to have that same performance. He's a young guy. You can't throw him in the spot. I get it. I get that starting him against the Jets is a good experience for him. But I would go back to Fitzpatrick because Fitzpatrick's been very solid. He's been fourth in running, and he's fourth in running according to the premium NFL stats, and he's been. And I mean, Tua had 2 fumbles that first game, so he's inconsistent.
No, Arjun, here's where you're wrong. Okay, I do agree. It was a big risk when they first did it. I thought it was questionable, but when you look back at what really happened, Brian Flores is one of the most trustworthy, one of the best coaches in the league. I think that he will win Coach of the Year this year if they win the playoffs. I mean, you have to give it to him. Just before I get into that point, if this Dolphins team that started out 0-7 last year and they're 10-7 since, if they make the playoffs, he obviously unanimously wins Coach of the Year. One of the best coaches in the NFL. I have so much respect for that man. But Tua Tagovailoa, 1 game, and this is his first start because the Jets game he came in the fourth quarter. His first start against a Cardinals defense that isn't bad, they aren't great. It's just kind of in the middle. And then you look at that, he went for 250 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, that is a great player. There's nothing else you can say about that. I have zero doubt in my mind he will win an MVP one day in this league. We saw before his big injury at Alabama, he was supposed to be that number 1 pick in the draft, not Joe Burrow. It was supposed to be Tua. And then he comes in, he drops to 5. People question if he'll be good off of his injury, and bam, 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 first start of his NFL career, and he throws for like 250 yards, 3 touchdowns. And I mean, this team was great with Ryan Fitzpatrick. You were right. But they've played the Rams. Or I guess, yeah, his first career start was against the Rams. That was my bad. But they played a Rams team with Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald. 2 huge weapons. And then you played this Cardinals team. Those are 2 very good opponents. And it went down to the wire against the Cardinals because they have an MVP candidate quarterback and arguably the best receiver in the league. I think that Tua, it was the correct decision after all. And I feel like it will be for the future for developing Tua to keep him starting, and I do think they'll make the playoffs. But Arjun, what do you think? Well, Isaac, what do you think?
Actually, Isaac, I want you to.
Yeah. Okay, so I think this is actually a good move to start Tua. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a pretty old quarterback. I think you definitely should start Tua. He had a good start. And, why would you draft? I mean, common sense, why are you drafting a quarterback at 5th, right? Is that what you said, 5th in the draft? And then not give him a chance to develop in his first season. And I think it's also, maybe your timing is not great, but I think it's good to put him in a little bit. You're letting him, get the experience of being under a very veteran quarterback. And I know it was very emotional for him. You saw the interviews that he gave, but I think it is a good move at the end of the day. Maybe they could have picked a better time to introduce him into the roster, but he's had a good couple games, and I think it is a good timing for them. And it seems foolish to draft a quarterback very incredibly high in the draft and not trust in him.
I feel like I feel bad for Ryan Fitzpatrick because he got benched, and I also feel bad. I'm kind of angry that the Cowboys didn't at least attempt to get him from that team to fill the void of Dak Prescott, but because he was having a great year. But when it boils down to it, they kind of introduced him at the perfect time, in my opinion. They were succeeding. They handed a succeeding team under a succeeding quarterback with a good coach to Tua Tagovailoa instead of starting him off with a Miami Dolphins team that had no expectations but him. Now they have these playoff expectations with good players like Devontae Parker to throw to, and you hand him into a situation where he is Aaron Donald, and then he plays Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey in his first game, and he might have had a bad game, but damn it, they won. They won that football game. And then they beat the Cardinals next game. I think he'll have to prove himself for the future, but also when it boils down to it, he did get development from being kind of fathered by Ryan Fitzpatrick in the little offseason they had. And now for the future, he will have this year as his first year in the NFL. I have no doubt in my mind he'll win an MVP at some point in his career.
I'll give my conclusion statement because, it could go, it did seem to work out, but I mean, that's the point. You gave him a winning culture. At this point, I do whatever it takes to make the playoffs, because if you make the playoffs, like you said before, I do love that Miami coach. He's a great coach, but that should be your main focus. And if you want to, this isn't the time to give a guy like him experience. It's the time. Well, okay, it worked out, but this is the time to win at all costs. Try and make the playoffs at any cost, and that doesn't mean starting a new quarterback. But you know what? Seemed like it worked out.
Yeah.
You may be inconsistent.
But what does it show to your team to put faith in a quarterback by drafting him really early in the round and then play an aging quarterback over him for the entire
season? But Isaac, with that aging quarterback, they were doing really well. They started out really well. So
yeah, I think it was a little bit weird, the timing of it, but I still think let him have games to train under him.
But yeah, anyways, I do want to move on. I want to talk about the NFC East. On track to be historically the worst division performance of all time. But you know what? Who do you guys have winning this? Actually, I'll start this off. I think that I'm not a fan of this team, but I do think that the Cowboys will win the NFC East. They are very, very injury depleted. Do not get me wrong. But let me explain myself. They're on a 2-7 record with their focal point of their offense, Ezekiel Elliott, playing the worst football of his career since the starting quarterback, who was on track to get one of the biggest quarterback contracts of all time. He got injured, and now they're on their fourth string quarterback with their star running back, who's the focal point of their offense, playing the worst football of his career, and their defense on track to be the worst defense in the NFL of all time, and they still found a way to compete with the alleged best team in the NFL, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it went down to a Hail Mary. They went down to a Hail Mary with the team that's allegedly, according to basically you, Arjun, the best team in the NFL, and they almost beat them on a Hail Mary with Garrett Gilbert as their quarterback.
I didn't say they're the best team in the NFL.
You said they're up there, but it's basically...
I said they're the fourth.
That's why I said basically.
Yeah, chill with that. I said they were fourth.
Yeah, but keep on. Yeah, go on.
I don't know. That was it.
Okay.
Are you finished with your point?
Yeah.
Actually, Isaac, start us off.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the Eagles. I don't have a lot of trust in Carson Wentz to take that team very far, but they have the best record right now. And I think with Dak Prescott, first of all, in general with the Cowboys, I have no trust in Jerry Jones to do anything right with their team. But I think it's going to be the Eagles. I don't have a lot of trust in Carson Wentz, but I still think that he can play better. He hasn't played incredibly well this season, but I still think he can play better than he has, and that can win them the division.
Yeah. But wait, okay, Arjun, you said what you got to say, and then I'll...
I'm going to go with the Washington football team. If you look at the stats, this Washington team's had some pretty good competition, and the teams that they're going to be playing up soon, I mean, the only real competition they're going to have are the Steelers. This team has an easy schedule coming forward. Now, Washington is 11th in points allowed and 4th in yards allowed. This is a pretty solid defensive team. Not solid, they're actually good defensive team. Now, Kyle Allen. I think he's a solid quarterback.
No. You cannot be
He's
possibly saying that to me. You cannot
Yeah, he's a
possibly
solid
come to me
quarterback.
and tell
He's
me
not-
that
he's
Kyle
not good, but
Allen
he's solid. He
is anything but the worst quarterback in the NFL. He is atrocious. I would rather have Ben DiNucci throwing me the football than Kyle Allen. In his years with the Panthers and in his years with the football team, I pray for Kyle Allen because of his injury that he had. He's probably out for the season, but Dwayne Haskins is coming in. He was just as bad. I mean, he has potential, of course. He was picked with the 14th pick behind Daniel Jones, which was infamous to a lot of people. But I think that their quarterback play is so bad. And this football team, you say that they haven't had injuries, which is unlike a lot of the teams in the NFC East. Which is why
the other teams have had way more injuries than them.
Yeah, the fact that they have had way more injuries, the Cowboys who have had way more injuries are in the same position, and the Redskins are the football team. I'm sorry,
the football team isn't a good team. I just think they're gonna win this conference. They're not a good team. They're not a good team, but they're gonna win the conference.
No, they're not.
This
Cowboys team depleted of a starting quarterback. They have basically a fifth string quarterback that's starting at quarterback.
Who has a great receiver in Terry McLaurin. He's a great
but who's going to throw to him? Goddamn it, they're going to have Dwayne Haskins throwing the ball. Terry McLaurin with any decent quarterback would be one of the best receivers in the league because he has nobody to throw him the football. This team, the Washington football team, they don't have any injuries holding them back, and they're still hot fucking garbage. This Cowboys team,
they're gonna mark my words. They're gonna win the East. They have an easy ass schedule. They have a good defense.
They don't have an easy ass schedule.
Carrying them right now.
They don't have an easy ass schedule going forward.
Yes, they do. The only competition they have the Seahawks. They have the Seahawks and the Steelers and the 49ers. And those are three teams that they're probably going to lose to. Everywhere else, they have an easy schedule.
Okay, let me break this down for you. Okay, so all four teams in this division, they do have pretty tough schedules going forward for the remainder of the season. But with the outbreak of Garrett Gilbert, the hopes that Ezekiel Elliott will at least make this a slump and not that he can't play without elite quarterback play because a lot of running backs do depend off of receiving yards. And let's hope that he doesn't have that symptom. I'm going to say symptom. But then say that he's not a reliant running back on quarterback play and that he bounces back at least half of what he used to be. The Cowboys have the most winnable games of the division left. And then the three of the winnable games would be in their division. That would be the football team, the Giants, and the Eagles. I say they win all three of those games. And they also have the Bengals and the 49ers at home. These are 5 winnable games. They have the most winnable games in the division. And they also have the best team in the division. I mean, the football team is not good, even without injuries. Their one remarkable player on offense is Terry McLaurin. I feel terrible for him because he's had a mixture of Dwayne Haskins, Alex Smith, and Kyle Allen throwing the ball this season. He's not going to get any yards. They're not going to make the playoffs.
They don't have a good offense, but they've got a good defense. They have a terrible conference. They don't need to be. They just need an easy schedule. Look, they're making it out of the East. That's all out of the NFC East. I don't care what you say. They're making it out of there.
Isaac, you got anything to add?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Ben, I think your mentality right now for the Cowboys is that they're, all of their players, they're playing like shit. They have a bunch of injuries. The only place you can go from here is up. That's your mentality right now. Mm-hmm. But how can you have confidence in them, because they're putting up good competition against these teams. But at the end of the day, they're still 2-7. They're still losing these games.
Yeah, no. Okay, I disregard all games without Dak Prescott besides this past Steelers game. DiNucci was an experiment. Andy Dalton was a very poor experiment. They were both those two quarterbacks were bad experiments. But then you go to Garrett Gilbert. Again, you can't just say that he's going to be great for the rest of his Cowboys career for the rest of this season, because of course that's just an assumption. He's like a 4th string quarterback. Assuming he's playing somewhat of what he's played like against the number 1 defense in the NFL, an 8-0 defense. Assuming that Ezekiel Elliott can play as good as a Pro Bowl running back, this team is by far the best team in this division. I would say the Eagles if their schedule wasn't so difficult. Carson Wentz has Fulgham. He has a decent receiving core. He has Miles Sanders once he comes back, and he has Boston Scott, who's a decent running back, and they also have somewhat of a decent defense. But then the Cowboys, they have the easiest schedule with the most winnable games left, but they also have the worst team who's playing the best.
Yeah, that's fair. I understand that. That's fair. You're just gonna have to wait and see if they don't keep, taking the
Yeah.
win.
Guys, at the end of the day, this is the worst conference in the NFL. Whoever makes it out,
Okay.
we can
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
agree
Wait.
that
Just
nothing's
to
gonna
make my
matter,
predictions. Just to
or
make my
that
predictions.
nothing's gonna really happen.
I do
But
think that the Cowboys will win their division and make the playoffs with 5 to 6 wins, which will be the funniest thing ever. I hope they win the least possible games possible to make the playoffs, so I can just laugh at them harder. But anyways, I do want to talk about something else, and it's Devontae Adams. Do you guys believe that Devontae Adams is the best receiver in the league? Actually, Arjun, you want to start us off?
I do, and Devontae Adams gets a hell of a lot of he gets a lot of fantasy points. Now, the reason that is because he's got a great quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, but he's the only real receiving weapon for the Packers. He's the only guy that Rodgers can really trust throwing that ball to. Now, I think the best wide receiver right now is DeAndre Hopkins. This guy is a terrific receiver. He has 704 total yards, 200 above Devontae Adams. He has the most receptions per game in 8.14. He averages more yards per receptions, 12.35 yards. And that's all I need to say. Hopkins gets more
No.
yardage.
Okay.
He's just better.
Hopkins previously has probably been the consensus best quarterback in the league. Is he? Well, receiver in the league. Pardon me, but he is not anymore. It is Devontae Adams. He has always been up there. But when you look at Devontae Adams, it's what he does is way more impressive because he's the only weapon on the team. When you go on the field,
No, that's because he's a high usage player.
no, as the defense, when you're a part of that defense, you walk on the field, you know 17's getting the ball. You know it's not going to anybody else. Maybe it's a handoff to Aaron Jones, but despite that, nobody else is getting the ball. You can double team him, you can triple team him, you cannot stop Devontae Adams. I mean, and you talked about great quarterback play, then you can talk about Kyler Murray. Every great receiver in the league has a great quarterback. That's just undisputed. You can't be a great receiver when Daniel Jones is your quarterback. You just can't do that because you just can't get the ball enough. But then let me lay down some stats for you because when you look at touchdowns, he's a touchdown magnet, which then pushes him above a lot of people because he leads the league in touchdowns when it comes to receivers. He has 8, I think, this season. You look at, he has a 96.4 completion percentage of catchable targets. And then when it comes to complete targets, it goes to 79.1, which would also lead the league despite the 96.4. And then also you brought up weapons because they don't have any more weapons. When you look at the Falcons like Julio Jones, or you look at the team like the Cardinals, they have other weapons. They have Christian Kirk. The current Packers team, I mean, their best receiver right now is probably their tight end, and other than that, there's really nobody. I mean, Martez Scalding, I can't even pronounce his name.
That's what makes it impressive because they have such a balanced team, but yet Hopkins has such more inflated numbers because he just
That's not true. He does not have better numbers. That is absolutely not true.
If you look at the yardage numbers, the receptions, all
Yes,
of those.
you know what? He's played 2 more games this season, Arjun.
That doesn't matter. If you look at the
He's
per
played
game
2 less games and he has 2 more touchdowns. He has just.
that doesn't matter. I know. Okay, you can disregard 200 yards. I get that point. But the receptions per games, he has more receptions per games. He has more yards per reception, and he's just on a better team. And because because Kyler Murray has more weapons,
He's not on a better team. Get the fuck out of here.
It's more impressive because he's putting up these great numbers.
Aaron Rodgers, just when he throws to Devontae Adams, has the highest passer rating in the NFL. What is your answer to that?
I have no answer to that because that's true. I'm not doubting that. And I think they're a great duo, but I'm not. I never said that they weren't a great duo.
Give me something.
Ben is a good point though. The defense knows what to expect. Like he is the second highest offensive rating on the Packers right now. And he's ranked number 1 in the league for wide receivers and number 1 in receiving right now. I mean, he's just like flat out a better player. He's the best wide receiver in the league.
In what stat?
In like
rating. No. But when you look at, again, he's played 2 less games. And when you step on that field, You like when you look at the Cardinals, they have another receiver who you have to worry about. They have Kenyon Drake and Chase Edmonds in that backfield that you have to worry about. You have one of the best, if not arguably the best, dual threat quarterbacks in the league in Kyler Murray to worry about. When you look at the Packers right now, especially with Aaron Jones, how much time he's missed, that when you step on that field, you go, you know what? You know what's going to happen every fucking play is going to be Aaron Rodgers downfield to Devontae Adams. There's no other answer. That's
and
why
they know that, and he's still outperforming all the other ones in the league. So they have that expected at this point, and he's still the best player in the he's still the best wide receiver in the league. So like at this point, it's pretty obvious.
I get your point. That is a good point. That they expect what to come in. Look, all I'm saying, I still believe in the fact that Rodgers only has one receiver to look at, and it's Devontae Adams.
More aggressive.
And even if he's every play, he's still going to get past him. I know he's a great receiver, but still.
He has by far the best route running in the NFL. Of course, there's no stat to show for that. You just have to watch him. When you watch, he's not the most athletically talented or athletically gifted or physically gifted receiver in the league. He's like 6'1", something, I think, and he runs like a 4.4. But then you look at guys like DK Metcalf, Julio Jones, those are athletic specimens. Even though he's not like them, he still completely outduels those guys when it comes to getting those touchdowns, getting those receptions. I mean, when you look at like Michael Thomas and Julio Jones, they lack to find the end zone as of recently. Of course, you can't blame Michael Thomas, but Devontae Adams is a touchdown magnet. He's a yard magnet, and especially in man coverage, you really just can't stop him.
Okay, if you compare touchdowns between the Cardinals in that team, they literally most of the time Kyler Murray can just give it off to Chase Edmonds, or he's a terrific running quarterback. So
he's
touchdowns,
played two more games.
That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter how many games you played. He's not you can't use that touchdown argument against them because Kyler Murray he can just run a QB. He just runs QB option every time. They just create a QB option play, or they give it up.
That's not true though. That's not true. They can, but they don't do that. They don't do that. But anyways, let's move on. Let's talk about who is everybody here. Who is your MVP frontrunner for the NFL season so far? I'll actually start this one off. It's Patrick Mahomes. When you look at it, of course, the public media will always give it this season so far, which is kind of shocking to me. They give it to Russell Wilson. Sometimes they give it to Aaron Rodgers. Sometimes they give it to even Tom Brady, of course, before last night because he shit the bed completely. But speaking of quarterbacks shitting the bed while on the field, you look at Russell Wilson last game, and you look at the fact that he had 4 turnovers. He did have 400 yards, but he had 390 yards for 2 touchdowns. One of those touchdowns was in garbage time when they had already been destroyed by the Buffalo Bills. I get that his defense is bad, but when you look at the best player of the season who is on the best team, leading them to the best team, that is Patrick Mahomes. He is putting up 25 touchdowns to the 1 interception that he has thrown this season. And I mean, comparing that to Russell Wilson's 28-8, that's 8 interceptions, 7 more than 1, if you can do simple fucking math. But then you look at the fact that it's the most valuable player award, and it's not the most valuable to your team, in my opinion. It is the most valuable player in the league. The player who possesses the most value of this season, that is Patrick Mahomes so far. We haven't seen Patrick Mahomes look bad. We've seen Russell Wilson look bad this season. We haven't seen that from Patrick Mahomes, but we have seen that from Russell Wilson. Arjun, what do you think about this?
Okay, I'm going to go on a rant. I have all these stats to counter every single thing you just said. Now, you do have the interception. Russell Wilson has been a little clumsy in that area. He threw a lot of picks. Now, they are 6-2, despite having a subpar defense. Now, you want to talk about touchdowns? Wilson is on pace for 60 touchdowns by the end of the season. He has the number 1 offensive rating, 95. Number 1 passing rating, number 3, and the number 2 running rating, 86, behind Kyler Murray. If you want to compare that to Mahomes has a 57 running rating. He doesn't have – look, he's got a bazooka. I know that. He can throw that ball. He's a great passer. But Wilson just has more He just has more weapons in his arsenal. Now,
You need to stop hitting me with these pro football focused stats that don't mean anything.
they
in the
do
grand
mean
scheme
everything
of things.
because they show you how they
No, because when you look,
I'm
look
gonna
at
keep going. I'm gonna keep going, Ben. I want to give you all my stats. Stop. Okay,
Russell
he
Wilson.
has 200 scramble yards already. 200 scramble yards. He's a terrific under pressure. He only has 5 sacks and 5 hits during the season. Now, if you look at the stats, the amount of QB hurries that have been allowed, he's only had 7. Mahomes is at 19.
How does that have any correlation to the quarterback position?
It shows how well you
offensive line.
That's not offensive line.
That is absolutely
offensive line.
Do you know what a hurry means? The defense hurries the quarterback out of the
pocket.
That's
how fast you can get the ball away. That's how
that's
fast
not.
you can
That's
get the ball away.
That's how quick
how good a quarterback is.
To the quarterback, because the offensive line on the Seahawks is objectively better than the Chiefs.
Only by 4 rankings. They have the 10th best offensive line, and the Chiefs have the 14th best. So you really can't use that argument. You want to talk about, say, he leads the league in deep passing. The NFL passer rating. Wilson is a superior passer. His passer rating is 120.
Passing have anything with the most valuable player in the league? You can't sit here and tell me Patrick Mahomes is not the best quarterback in the league, despite maybe even the best player in the league when it comes down to it. You can say Aaron Donald, but
I can tell you that he's not the most valuable to his team, and that's Russell Wilson.
Oh, no, it's not. Of course, no. When you look at his team, replace Patrick Mahomes with Russell Wilson, and you swap teams. That Seahawks team gets drastically better because they have the best quarterback in the league.
Opposite. Wait, Ben, I want you to let me keep going. I'm going to give you some more. I want you to tell me about this. Mahomes has my opinion now, the best tight end in the league in Travis Kelce. He has one of the best wide receivers. He's got Tyreek Hill. He's got now Antonio Brown. He now has Le'Veon Bell, who was in time for 5 years the best running back in the league. No doubt about that.
You mentioned a running back who has been a shadow of his old self.
He has Metcalf and Lockett on his team, but he's carrying the Seahawks team. You're saying it's obviously who's the most valuable to their team, not to the league. Mahomes may have $200 million in his contract. I don't care. Oh, I'm going to sum this up so Isaac can get his take. And I'm sorry, Isaac, it's taking a while. But Mahomes is just a statistically better passer, a better runner, and a better offensive player.
No, okay. So,
and better under pressure.
You mentioned Antonio Brown not on the Chiefs. Well, not on the Seahawks, by the way. Not on the Chiefs or the Seahawks. Then you look at Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is...
Oh, wait, yeah, that's my bad.
Kelce is arguably the best tight end in the league.
He is. He's better than Kittle right now.
Yeah, but no, I mean, obviously,
better than Kittle.
You can't just determine that. That's opinionated. But also, like, Tyreek Hill is not as good as DK Metcalf. You look at DK Metcalf, you look at Tyler Lockett, you can't compare these weapons because they both have elite weapons. That doesn't give you any advantage, especially when you look at the fact that Wilson has had 2 bad games and has a worse record. I mean, the 2 bad games, it might not seem like that much, but in the MVP race, when you're going against a guy that has not looked slightly bad all season, his 1 interception came in their 1 loss where they competed. And then you look at the Seahawks last game, they were not competing with the Buffalo Bills defense or the offense.
Isaac, let Isaac get his take in.
The only thing I'm just gonna add to Arjun's argument. I think that Russell Wilson will be the MVP for this year. It's turning out that it could be his best regular season performances in entire career. Seattle is number 1 in passing and offense right now. I know they're 6-2, but I think they can definitely bounce back from their losses. He's number 1 in passing and offense and number 3 in rushing right now. Russell Wilson. I just think this is just gonna be his MVP year. His statistics show it team wise, and it also shows it on an individual level.
I think he's lost his chance to be in the MVP race.
How has he lost his chance just from that? No, it's more open. But Ben, it's more open. But I want to give you a quick under pressure. Russell Wilson is a far more superior passer when under pressure.
How does that have anything to do with the most valuable player?
Completion. He's 48% under pressure. Guess what Wilson is? Wilson's 55%. Wilson's easily a much better scrambler than.
What does that have anything to do with the most valuable player?
Yes, it does. It's better. He's better than him. Yes, MVP does factor in who's better. And if you want to bring out value, he's way more valuable than Mahomes because the Chiefs are such a better team, well-rounded. They've got a solid defense. They've got a good offense. Look, I know he has great offensive weapons in Metcalf and Lockett, but the Seahawks just don't have a good defense, and he's carrying that team right now.
No, but like, okay, when you look at it in the NBA terms, you look at like if you swap these players, the teams will be drastically different records. When you look at the NFL, you look at Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. There is no denying that. There is no changing anybody's mind
Yes,
on
there
that.
is.
There is none.
No, he's not right now.
No. And then you look at like if these people swap teams, you just for the Seahawks. That doesn't change their defense. That doesn't change anything about their defense. They just get a better quarterback, which then makes them a better team. You look at the Chiefs; they get a worse, but an elite. They get an elite quarterback who's just worse than Mahomes. There's not much difference when it comes to value to their team when you compare these two players, except for the fact that
yes, there is.
Except for the fact that Russell Wilson has just done progressively worse when it comes to statistically than Patrick Mahomes this season.
No, it's not. Okay,
Seven more interceptions.
First of all, the Seahawks, you cannot make that comparison because
10
the
more
Seahawks
turnovers.
are not as great of a team as the Chiefs. If you talk about as a well-rounded roster, the Chiefs just have way more weapons. This is a Super Bowl team I'm talking about. I'm not trying to use that against Mahomes, but I actually am. I'm using it in Wilson's favor because Wilson has done so much with this team. He's literally, I know he had a subpar game last game.
Wilson doesn't.
You said earlier that one game takes him out of the MVP race. That one, just one 400 passing yard,
in 2 games,
yard game.
He had a combined 8 turnovers in 2 games. That is not you are eliminated from the MVP.
No, you are not. You were
bad of a game.
He had one bad game, and
16,
he still had 400
16
yards.
games.
That's
in
how valuable it is.
If you have 2 games where you look like Mitchell Trubisky, you cannot be the most valuable player in the league. And Mitch
Trubisky would never put up like 300 yards. Russell Wilson, that just shows you he has a pretty subpar game, and he still puts up 400 yards. That's how bad. That's how good.
Bad out there, Arjun. He looked bad out there. There's no denying.
If you watch the game, he looked
bad out there. But let's
okay. He looked bad, but that just shows you how many yards he still got. Now, I'm gonna give you I think I'm gonna give you my closing argument because I just still think that Russell Wilson is doing more with less. He's still doing more with less compared to Mahomes. The Chiefs are just have more weapons on the team. Now, the stats all show that Russell Wilson is a far superior offensive player this season.
That is not true.
Yes, it is. If you look at all the PFF ratings, he's number 1 in offense.
You've said these stats 80,000 times. Now let's move on. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about which quarterback is more valuable to their team, Drew Brees or Tom Brady. Actually, Isaac, do you want to start this one off?
Yeah. Okay, I will start this off. Okay, so I'm taking Tom Brady is the more valuable player to his team. Let's just set aside statistics and actual impact, like impact on the field for a second. First of all of these free agents followed him to the Bucs this season. That's not nothing. That is direct impact on your team. They've also said even on the defensive end, which is pretty incredible to me, that they've had a whole change in their work ethic, bringing Tom Brady in there. You can say what you want about how he's playing at this point in his career, but the work ethic is still there. He's still the GOAT. So he's bringing in that work ethic to that team. And all of these players followed him to the team. And that's pretty significant, you know? And then I think statistically, if you look at offensive ratings of players on the Bucs and then on the Saints, Drew Brees is like number 4 in offensive rating for their team on the Saints, but Brady is number 1. So he's injecting himself right into their offense. I know we just had a game where the Saints wiped the floor with the Bucs, but that doesn't necessarily say your impact on that team. I know Tom Brady did not have a good game. I still think Tom Brady is having a higher impact on that team.
Arjun?
Okay, thank you, Ben. I'm going to go with Brees in this one. And, you know, I do agree that Brady's had a great recruiting impact. But, I mean, let's look at last season. Last season for the Buccaneers, they had Jameis Winston, who turned the ball over 15 times last season. He was an absolutely terrible QB, and they still were 7-9. They have a great team. Or they weren't nobodies before. They were still a very good team besides that terrible
Yeah,
quarterback
you can't
before
use that.
Tom Brady showed up.
You can't use that argument with Drew Brees because Drew Brees has been in New Orleans his entire career. You can't like Drew Brees didn't drop off from the team that he's been his entire career and
No,
just
I'm not.
an entirely
Ben,
new team.
I'm proving the fact that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were not nobodies before Tom Brady showed up. They were still a great team. Now let's look at the Drew Brees. Ever since Drew Brees came into the Saints, he's developed a winning culture. I mean, let's be real. For 3 or 4 years, they've been our number one favorites coming into the season for 3 or 4 years. And that's because a direct result of Drew Brees' impact. Now, let's look at this season now. I'm going to give it
First of all,
some more.
If you want to talk about like turning into a winning culture, talk about Tom Brady. He's basically the CEO of that. I mean, he came into the Patriots, and when he starting, he then became the winningest quarterback in NFL history. But Isaac, what were you saying?
Yeah, well, first of all, talk about blown expectations. If you're talking about coming into a season as the number one favorite, they've failed on all of those seasons to execute.
Yeah, no, not really. They've had great regular seasons. I mean, you want to talk about the missed pass interference call against the Rams. We can talk about there's the Stephon Diggs miracle. They've been very close coming to that. It's been failed seasons because they haven't made the Super Bowl, but they've been very close. And the fact that this team's come in and been contenders for so many years. Now, I'm going to get back to this year before I let you go on, Ben. He's led his team despite Emmanuel Sanders and Michael Thomas being injured. He's led his team. The Saints defense, if you watch the games, they've been pretty inconsistent. I mean, Kamara's still been pretty good, but I mean, Brees has still kept this team afloat despite those 2 wide receivers being out, and now they're back in. So I think this team is going to be, they're going to be very good this year. But Ben, you take it.
I have some things to tell you because you're talking about Drew Brees and like how he changed the winning culture, and of course he did that. That's why like he's the leader in like 3 of big statistical categories in the NFL's history when it comes to like passing yards, passing touchdowns. He's a great quarterback. These are 2 of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, arguably. But when you look at the Saints and you look at Drew Brees' impact, let's look at last year when they were practically the same team they are right now. Drew Brees went out for 5 games. Teddy Bridgewater, their backup quarterback, came in, went 5-0. You look at this year, they have, when you're talking about value to their team, how valuable they are to their team, that impact, you talk about that if Drew Brees gets injured, they've lost Teddy Bridgewater, but they picked up Jameis Winston. He's now their backup quarterback, and like he was turnover hungry last season, but when you really look at it, he's definitely, no question, the best backup in the league. He deserves to be a starting quarterback. That's why they picked him up, because Drew Brees is probably retiring after the season. They wanted a not star, but like a good caliber quarterback to replace Drew Brees. Jameis Winston is the best backup in the NFL, no doubt in my mind. But then you look at the Buccaneers. Who's their backup? Mike Glennon. I think that's who their backup is. If Tom Brady goes out, bam, season is over. You look at the Saints again, last year 5-0 without Brees. I'm not saying that they're better without him, but his impact is not nearly as great as Tom Brady's is. You look at what Isaac said earlier. Tom Brady not only is a winning culture, but he brings winning culture along with him. He brings players along with him that want to win because they want to play with Tom Brady, which adds on to the impact and the value because he brings people in. He brought in Antonio Brown, for God's sake. He's played 1 game and got 3 receptions, but that was his first game with the team. I think that Brees, he is a great quarterback, but Jameis Winston has the potential to be just about as impactful as Brees is currently when it comes to winning football games because they do have a great defense. They have great weapons around them. They have the best running back in the league. You look at the Buccaneers, they do have some pretty good
receivers.
Alvin
Kamara is the best running back in the league?
Well, not the best running, arguably.
One of the best. Okay, yeah.
I would say he's top 3. I would say he's above Derrick Henry, and you might not like that because you're a Titans fan. But throwing that in, they do have Michael Thomas, who's debated by many to be the best receiver in the league. You have Emmanuel Sanders, who is very good on the Broncos, and he's been very good since. But I think that generally, I think that Brady is a lot more valuable. But Arjun, what do you have to say?
Look, guys, this is a very tight argument. I know that this was hard for me to choose because I was looking at this and I was like, you have so many valid arguments for both points. Look, I know Tom Brady has a winning culture, but this Buccaneers team is such a great, well-rounded team. They've got such a great defense.
Yeah, part of that is because Talk about the people that Brady has helped bring in the offseason. Like, aren't they also signing Antonio Brown right now?
Yeah, no, but also
that's not what I'm saying.
When you
It
talk
was
about
still a great
well-rounded
team
teams,
last year. It
if
wasn't
you're talking
like
about
Brady.
well-rounded teams. You got to look at the Saints, because the Saints are a lot more of a well-rounded, better team than the team.
They've had a very inconsistent defense. So if you watch the games, they've been very inconsistent.
But they still have a very good defense, a better defense than the Buccaneers, I can damn near assure you. But I think that Brees is a lot less valuable to his team, because also there's the non-debunked conspiracy, which I think has turned into a fact, that Brees can't throw downfield. Brees doesn't have his arm anymore. We've seen it. I think he's lowest in the league of quarterbacks that start in throwing in deep ball percentage of when he's on the field. And I think that's 4.3. That's pretty low.
Or maybe it's because with Sanders and Thomas being out, he likes to throw it to Kamara, who's one of the best receiving running backs. Maybe
it's been the same. It's been the same in previous years too. He's starting to lose his arm a little bit. That's why he's probably retiring after this year. I think Brady is still the same player we've seen. People thought that coming into the Buccaneers, he was a system quarterback under Bill Belichick, because he's one of the greatest coaches of all time. But I think Bill Belichick was a system coach under Tom Brady. But anyways, let's talk about something else. Let's talk about, should the Giants draft a new quarterback this offseason or trust in Daniel Jones to develop? Arjun, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I'll start us off. Actually, yeah. I'm gonna keep this just straight up brief, because I don't have any advanced stats for this, and I don't think there's needed any stats for this. Actually, I do have some stats, but Daniel Jones he's 16th in offense, in passing, and 3rd in running. I get it. He's turnover hungry. He's very turnover hungry. But remember, he's new in this league, and he's a solid quarterback. My point is, if you give him more weapons, I know you can say this for any quarterback, but this guy has no weapons whatsoever in the Giants. No weapons. Saquon's been out. He has no weapons, so just give him a chance.
Okay, no. So this is my philosophy with quarterbacks, and I've always said this, quarterbacks and general managers, is that a patient general manager is always the most successful, because they wait on that quarterback especially. But to win a Super Bowl, you don't need an elite quarterback. That's something that I've always said, and I think I've said this last episode too, is that you just need a quarterback to play consistent football and not fuck up the game, not lose the game. You don't need him to be an MVP. You just need to build a team around them that is elite enough where if he just doesn't lose the game for you, you are cruising. That's like what we've seen with a lot of teams, like that Nick Foles Eagles team back in 2017. Of course, that was a miracle, but you get what I'm saying. Daniel Jones is lacking extremely in one of those departments from fitting perfectly in this philosophy. Yes, he is a second-year player, but the fucking up the game is something that he does every single game of his career. He's thrown up 46 turnovers so far in his career, Arjun. 46 turnovers. I think that's 10 touchdowns on his career and 46 turnovers. That is horrendous. He does not have any room, because also you might say, oh, he has the potential. He doesn't have many weapons, so you can't really grade him until he gets weapons, which for a lot of quarterbacks, like Carson Wentz, people say that about Carson Wentz all the time, but there's literally been no signs of Daniel Jones being an elite quarterback in the NFL. He has never once in a game in his career cracked the NFL passer rating above 79.5, and you want to hear some quarterbacks that have cracked higher than that? Nate Mullins and Sam Darnold. If you are progressively worse than those guys, what the hell type of potential do you have? You don't have potential. And I'm a big Daniel Jones fan. I'm a Duke football fan. I was watching that guy for 3 years when he played at Duke, and he was pretty good there, and he had some good weapons. But when it comes to NFL football, you need to win, and you can't win with a quarterback who actively loses you football games.
Matt, I'm just going to take exactly what you said in the first half of your argument and apply that to Daniel Jones, because you talked about, first of all, you criticized Daniel Jones for never going to be an elite player. But then you said, I've said this over and over again, you don't need an elite quarterback to lead your team. So if you're saying that one of your ideal situations as a football team is having a quarterback that can just be consistent and have good weapons around him, Daniel Jones can be that quarterback. He just doesn't have the weapons around him. If you listen, if you develop him into a player that can be consistent, right now it seems like he's aiming for a high ceiling to be an elite player. as this goes for any sport, if you can accept your role and just settle in that role like he could do and accept he's not going to be an elite quarterback and then just focus on being consistent, he can get there and he can get into the exact role that you were talking about.
Yeah, no, okay. I messed up with the elite part. I just meant a consistent quarterback because he's anything but. Again, big fan of Daniel Jones, big fan of Duke football, but when it comes to being a starting quarterback in the NFL, Daniel Jones doesn't have the capabilities to be that he's shown. Again, 2 years, never cracked an NFL passer rating above 79.5. Atrocious quarterback play. You see potential in a lot of guys. Like when you look at Carson Wentz and you go, you know what? That guy does average a lot of turnovers, but you can see like a 3 or 4 like Mahomes type plays a game when he doesn't have many weapons. You look at, I mean, even though he hasn't had a lot of potential. Well, he hasn't had a lot of weapons on his team, but even with the lack of weapons that he's had and the lack of offensive line he's had, the stats that he's put up are unacceptable to be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Look, okay, I'm gonna get just my conclusion statement because you know what? If they want to get rid of Daniel Jones, go ahead. I'm not gonna care about that. You know, I can see why, but me personally, as a GM, I would give him one chance. My one chance is that you get a better offensive line. They have a pretty atrocious offensive line right now. When you look at the offensive line stats, they're terrible. The New York Giants, if you have Saquon Barkley on, I get it. You have Saquon Barkley. But if you get somewhat of a receiver, I say you give him an experimental year. I don't care if he's not showing signs. You give him an experimental year. It's not like the Giants are going to win a Super Bowl anytime soon because they're not. They're really not going to win a Super Bowl soon or be in the contending team. So what I would do is I would just try and set up an experimental year for Daniel Jones.
No, but the thing is, like, he's had seasons where, again, he hasn't had great weapons, but he literally hasn't shown a single spark of potential except for his first NFL game where he played good against an defense, which was the Buccaneers. But a thing that I do want to mention is the fact that this NFL draft coming up is a draft full of quarterbacks that have shown that they can be elite. They've shown more signs of being elite than Daniel Jones has in his NFL and football career. I mean, you have guys coming in, like you have Jalen Hurts from Oklahoma. Or not from Oklahoma. You have Jalen Hurts. You have Trevor Lawrence. You have Trevor Lawrence, for God's sake. I mean, if, say, the Jets win a game, you'll get that first pick if you don't win any more games. Then you can get Trevor Lawrence, who is supposed to be more than elite. He's supposed to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league by the end of his career. And I think that you need to get rid of Daniel Jones if you want to win anything because he just doesn't have the potential to be anything good. And there's players who have far, far, far more potential than he does. But there's one more thing we do have to talk about today, and that is, has Dalvin Cook proven himself to be the best running back in the league? Arjun, what about you start us off?
Okay. Actually, Isaac, you start us off, and then I'll go after that.
Okay. I think, in short, I think he has proven himself to be the best running back in the league. I think statistically, he's shown that. Actually, really quick, I'll send it to you, Arjun.
Right now, you're finished?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I mean, Dalvin Cook, this guy he's had 2 insane games recently. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of stats. He has the most rushing yards per game, 122 rushing yards. And before I get into these stats, I want to mention that Christian McCaffrey, I know he's back from an injury, and there's a high chance Christian McCaffrey is going to overtake him for that best running back in the league. And there's a high chance that he will. But for now, Dalvin Cook has been absolutely insane. He has the highest running rating, the highest offensive rating. He already has 12 rushing touchdowns. And if you want to look at the stats, 4 yards after contact. He gets 4 yards after the defense makes first contact with him. And he's already had accumulated 36 avoided tackles after rush, only has 1 football. And if you want to just look at pure running, he's had 6 yards per attempt. Now, Ben, I want to get through. I'm almost finished.
Come on, man.
McCaffrey, in the time he's been, during his only few games, he's had 75 yards per game, which is still insanely impressive for a running back. He's had 4 yards per attempt, not as much as Dalvin Cook has had. And he's only had 2 yards after contact. Go
Come
ahead.
on, man. Come on, man. You're pushing it. You're pushing it a little bit with this ridiculousness that you're
How am
just
I
throwing
pushing
out
it
right
though?
now.
He is the best
Yeah,
running back
two
right now.
games, two games that he has played. I would put Dalvin Cook at fourth right now of best running backs. You can't put him at number one after 2 games. Of course, he's on an
It's
offense
not
where
2 games. He's been a consistent. He's
no,
been
he's
very
not been
consistent.
consistently the best running back in the game. You said this after Derrick Henry had a good game. You said he was the best running back in the game. You can't get him on switching this. Christian McCaffrey, the last season he played an entire season, and he was the first running back to ever have 1,000 rushing and receiving yards, or the third ever to have that stat. Dalvin Cook hasn't done that. He's had 2 very good games. And I mean, if you're a fantasy owner, you really like Dalvin Cook right now. But when you look at Christian McCaffrey, he just came back from an injury and he scored 2 touchdowns against the Chiefs defense. I mean, besides the Raiders, he played the Buccaneers and the Chiefs defenses, which are very good defenses, especially the Chiefs. They're about the 4th best defense in the league, especially for running backs. But then you can't compare these two. They're not on the same tier. That's disrespectful to Christian McCaffrey, as he's proven time and time again that he is the best running back in the league. I know he has that shoulder injury right now, but he played through and he went to the Chiefs when they knew that he was going to be the only guy touching the football, and he still dominated them. He did that for 16 games last season too. Last season, every game people came in. Kyle Allen was the starting quarterback. Everybody knew what was going to happen. Everyone knew 22 was getting the rock every single play. He got 55% of the offensive snaps, and he still got what he needed to get done. You can't compare Dalvin Cook to him.
You can compare Dalvin Cook to him because the amount of yardage that he's been getting over this past time has been absolutely insane. I mean, he had 163 yards. He's had 181 yards, 206 yards. 130 yards. He's been absolutely insane. Now, I personally think that McCaffrey's probably going to overtake him by the time of the next season. But right now, in the power rankings, Dalvin Cook, with these past 2 games, you can't say these have been past 2 great games. They're not great games. They're absolutely insane games. They're absolutely insane. So that's why I would have, and all the stats just show that he is the highest running rating right now.
No. Stop it with the Pro Football Focus rating. Stop it with all the NBC ratings. Stop it all these ratings.
They're right though.
No. The people they're not right because they're rating it off of things that Christian McCaffrey hasn't been able to do because he hasn't been able to play. Last time we saw Christian McCaffrey play, he was in MVP contention as a running back.
But when he starts to play, I know that when he starts to play, he'll probably surpass Dalvin Cook. But right now, at this moment, Dalvin Cook's ahead of him.
No, I mean if you put Christian McCaffrey on that team right now, the Vikings team fully healthy, then he's going to go for double what Dalvin Cook does because he's just so much better of a running back. You can't possibly be telling me that Dalvin Cook is better than Christian McCaffrey. You clearly just haven't watched them. You just base it off fantasy points. There's no way. I'm
not basing it off fantasy points. I'm basing it off of real stats, and I get it. But right now,
you want to talk about stats? Christian McCaffrey is the CEO of stats last season. 3rd running back ever to get.
That's last season. That's not this season. That's not this season. Ben,
he's
you
the
have
same
no
player.
idea what power rankings
He's the
mean.
exact
You have no
same
idea
player.
what power rankings mean right now. Power rankings are who's at the best at that specific moment. And right now, Dalvin Cook's stats, what he's been putting up, what he's done for his team, has just outweighed Christian McCaffrey's 3 games.
Because he's played 3 games, obviously, and
That's the point. He hasn't played enough to become better than He hasn't played enough to overtake Dalvin Cook at the moment.
Dalvin Cook hasn't overtaken anybody. He's not even the top 3, but Isaac, what do you want?
Yeah, guys. I think we gotta wrap it up. You guys both made good points. I think we gotta wrap it up.
All right, yeah, that will be it for us today. It's been a good one, but before we leave, like and subscribe. Get your merch. Obviously, it's so comfortable, so clean. We all got it on. Our student doesn't have a hoodie yet, but you can get a mask to protect from Corona, getting everything. But yeah, go ahead and like and subscribe. And
don't forget about it. Shut Up Ben. Shut Up Ben merch is so amazing.
And check in with us later for more episodes.